YouTube, welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. It's been a minute since my last video, 3 months actually, and I've been itching to make one. Many of you have been reaching out via email or in the comments to ask if and when my next video would be. So thank you for that nudge, it was time. For today's video, I want to talk about a few things. First, the new Corvette ZR-1, then I want to touch upon the E-Ray. I'll provide an update on my ongoing Z06 versus Grand Sport dilemma. Then I want to talk about the Autocross from this past summer, give an update on the 24 Hours of Lemons car, and then talk about some other motorized toys that I recently acquired. Without further ado, let's dive in. I want to say a quick thank you first to a couple specific subscribers who've been diligently writing me, letting me know that I'm not forgotten. Terry and Doug, thank you both for reaching out so often. I always enjoy hearing from you. Bill Lemon, your kind words specifically are what prompted me to make this video. And last but certainly not least, Lorenzo, your enthusiasm about cars and the car world humbles my own. And every interaction between us is something I look forward to. To be honest, the last several months, I've not really been following too much in the Corvette world. But even unplugging myself from seeking out info, the stories creep in. Strikes and plant shutdowns, markups softening, perpetually long wait lines for the Z06, the impending E-Ray release, and even the forthcoming ZR-1 being spotted testing. I can't seem to escape it, so I wanted to share a few thoughts. First, the ZR-1. Over the past couple weeks, there have been a handful of sightings of test cars, both in the US and in Germany. It appears there's a big bump in power, probably due to twin turbos, a number of other cosmetic changes like different wheels, extra cooling vents, and at the back, a big all-business rear wing that evokes the new GT3 RS. Watching the car zipping around the Nürburgring, several track photographers and videographers have commented that the car appears to be quite serious and that it looks to be clinging for grip when under power. From what I can see, much like the prior generation ZR-1, the car is going to be a handful in a good way. It seems to take the mindset of drag racers of the past. Take a good platform, add as much power as you can. Sounds like a good recipe to me. Realistically, as much as it might be fun to own one, especially considering the current cost of the Z06, even without markup, the ZR-1 is well above the budget that I'd consider, so that's going to be a car that's fun to see when I stumble across it in the real world, but not one that I would ever own. Pivoting a bit to the E-Ray, Chevy's been handing some of them out to various YouTubers and review outlets to start experiencing the car. There have been a few puzzling choices though as to how they did this. First, with the car aimed as more of a grand tourer than a track car, and given that some track organizations have already banned it due to the batteries in it, it seems odd to me that the initial wave of reviews were hosted at a variety of racetracks. In my mind, go down to the Dragon, close down the road, and let reviewers zoom up and down it. Or find a great section of the PCH and let people explore. Or go out in the wide open spaces of Utah. There's some amazing grand touring roads out there. But that's not what happened. Instead, reviewers seem to have gotten short stints in the car at a racetrack or on skid pads, and then maybe a little bit of the normal roads near those facilities. What this has appeared to highlight is some of the limitations and quirks of the car, in addition to some of its strengths. Certainly, the car accelerates fast? Check. It has tons of grip, especially with that front end clawing the car around corners. Check. Cue the sort of weird electric whirring noises piped in over the speakers to remind you that you're in a performance hybrid. Check. That was all expected. However, the track environment also highlighted a couple of things that users are going to notice. When driven hard on the track, the hybrid battery loses charge pretty quickly. You seemingly can only call upon it for power for about one hero lap before output is dialed back and the car has to recharge it. You can go into a more conservative mode, which dials the power back down, hopefully to spread it out over several hours, but then you lose much of the thrill of having that first all-wheel drive Corvette. In addition, when you try to do anything at the limit, reviewers have commented that the front and back of the car don't seem to be fully in sync. Pushed hard into a drift, for example, and the car seems to seesaw back and forth between trying to push power out to the front or pull it to the back, almost as if it doesn't realize the driver is trying to perform a slide, which results in the car seemingly fighting itself for grip, and not quite knowing if it should lean in and let you drive like a ham, or if it should dial it back and recover the grip. Push it enough and you can make it do what you want, but it's clear that the car wasn't really designed for that kind of hooliganism. The good news though is that these relatively minor foibles aren't really going to be much of a problem. This is a car meant to go on long, comfortable, spirited drives or road trips, to slice up corners of a good road and then bring that horizon right to you on the straight stretches when you stomp the accelerator. That's what the hybridization is really there to provide. Accessible, substantial power, the assurance of all-wheel drive, and the excitement of that acceleration. Sure, there will be a few people, probably a number of YouTubers, who will bring the car to a track, and then they're going to bemoan some of these quirks that I mentioned earlier. But the reality is that that's not where this car is really designed to shine. For you, for me, and the average enthusiast driver, the real fun of this car is going to be on those great drives on your favorite roads. Since we're on the topic of the C8, I think I should talk for a moment about the Z06. As of this video, I'm roughly 700 spots back in line at McMulkin. Honestly, a pretty significant drop versus the last few months, but also at least a year or two out if the past is any indication. So, with all of the time that's passed, have I figured out what I want to do? I have. I'm going to pass on the Z06, at least as of today. I've decided that I love my C7 Grand Sport, the sound, the look, the driving, and most importantly, by far, the manual transmission. If the Z06 offered a manual, I very likely would have decided to get the car. The older I get, and I just turned 40 in August, the more I realize that the things I value most in a car are feel and engagement, not speed and performance. The C7 itself is a very fast car. The C8 is faster, and the C8 Z06 is quite a bit faster than that. But I know that I'd miss the engagement of the clutch and the shifter, the skill in trying to rev match myself as I downshift, and the burbles and growls of that pushrod V8. I love the Z06, and I think it's just an amazing car, but for now, I'm going to pass. That said, I have no incentive to cancel my reservation until my number is called. And who knows, maybe somehow my finances will allow me to get it and keep the C7 at the time that I get that call. If I can, that would be fun, but it is also a long shot. What I won't do, though, is sell my spot or buy the car to flip. I've had a few people ask about selling my spot or suggest that I could flip the car to make some money. Though I think the markups and flipping will have diminished significantly by the time that my number is drawn, I have no interest in that. I don't think it's the right thing to do to enrich myself by taking advantage of others. Hard pass. I get it. Everybody likes money, and I certainly could use an extra 20 or 30K, but I don't think it's the right thing to do, and personally, I'd rather cancel my spot at the time to speed up the line for everyone else behind me just to get their cars that much sooner. Sure, maybe I'll hit Powerball, or maybe my investments will strike it rich unexpectedly, but unless either of those things happen, I don't want to be one of the leeches that preys on other enthusiasts just to make a buck. There's already enough of those jerks out there. Speaking though of performance, this past summer I did several autocross events in the C7. The Bay State Corvette Club hosts several events throughout the season at the Massachusetts State Police Vehicle Training Facility, which is an old airport. Each event has, 60 to 70 cars, and this year I really progressed in my ability. By the last event, I was the fastest Corvette driver at the event, surpassing even other drivers in C8s. There was a new NSX at the last event who was perpetually one of the fastest cars there, and I managed to whittle my lap times down to be within 2.5 seconds of his, in a car that's rear-wheel drive, with a manual transmission, and has 25% less power. It was a good example to me of how much of it is the car versus how much is the driver. Taking nothing away from that other driver, that NSX driver is very good, at least in my opinion. But beating C8s in my old C7 really was the highlight of the day for me. Now, some of my subscribers may remember my plans to build a garage for hosting several more cars. I got all my quotes, and the garage that I was quoted in 2022 at $40,000 to build is now a minimum of $56,000 and as high as $80,000 to build. For the moment, for me, that's just not worth it. It's still on my to-do list, but I don't feel like it's worth that much of an investment at the moment. So wait a minute, what about the Lemons car build? Is it done? Did you race? What's the deal, Fred? Alright, let me give you an update there. We've still been working very diligently on the car, almost every weekend, at least one day to work on the car, and it's still not quite done. The biggest stumbling block here for us has been the roll cage, specifically welding it together. Everything has to be put in a specific order. Access to some of the welds is incredibly tight. Every weld is getting scrutinized so that we're sure that we pass the tech inspection. Right now, we're about 80% of the way done with the welding. Most of the cage is tacked, and about 70% of the total cage is fully welded. We've wired up our electrical shutoffs, we've gutted the dashboard so that it fits over the cage in the front, and we've sorted out some of the gremlins we found in the brakes. But our timing means that unfortunately we can't make the race that we had planned to this year. But there is a silver lining here. We've done some thinking and we're going to wrap up the car this winter, but then use it not just for lemons, but also some car track days this coming season. Most of the team is on the same page that we care more about seat time and fun than specifically about lap times or winning. The biggest reason that I haven't taken the Corvette out on an actual track day is the risk to the car and liability insurance. The Lemons car is made for that kind of driving, so our plan right now is to wrap up the car over the winter and then enter track days and driving events as soon as they start up in the spring. Honestly, I think this is a better approach because we wouldn't have had any time to test the car had we pushed to make that race in October. And very likely we would have had some sort of mechanical failures or issues at the race. This way we can shake down the car, we can get used to how it drives, how it handles, do some of the adjustments to the settings, test everything, including our pit stops, getting out of the car in a fire, the radios, and then really be ready when it's time to race. So I hear you. Fred, you've backed out of the Z06, you haven't built that garage that you want, and you haven't even finished building the Lemons car yet. What's the deal, man? Are you going to do anything fun? I am. In fact, I had the most fun I've had in quite some time this past summer. My wife and I worked remote from Kennebunkport, Maine this past summer, every day being able to walk our dog on the beach in the morning and the evening. I did a lot of jet skiing out on the Atlantic, exploring the coast and finding big waves to play in. We went out to Cape Cod for a week this summer for more sand and more sun. I also picked up 3 more toys. I bought a new Vespa picnic for my wife as a birthday present. Her birthday is not till the end of October, so surprising her in mid-September was a great way to ensure she had no idea. She's wanted a Vespa for longer than I've known her, and I decided it was time for her to get one. We've been having fun with me teaching her all the basics and safety stuff before she takes it on the road, and the plan is to bring it up to Maine next summer to drive around. So that I can keep up with her and not have to ride on the back, I also picked up a 2023 Husqvarna Svartpillen 401 to ride with her. It's the first time I've ever owned a small displacement bike, and I can say that it's a blast to ride. It's light, about 240 pounds, gets about 80 miles a gallon, and with 44 horsepower, it actually has somewhat decent acceleration. I've always heard the saying that it's more fun to ride a slow bike or a car fast than it is to ride a fast bike or a car slowly. And I gotta say, I can see what they're on about that. This bike comes with an up-down quick shifter, which means that you don't have to use the clutch for up or down shifting if you don't want to, and the bike just cuts the spark for a split second and you can shift immediately. So you can blast around on local roads, up and down through the gears, and the best part is that this thing is always going street legal speeds. From 30 to 45 miles an hour is right in the sweet spot for this bike. Any faster than that and it takes forever to accelerate. I'm really pleased with it, and I'm excited that I'm going to have it up in May next year to ride around while my wife is on her scooter. And I'm not done. Earlier this summer, I was just cruising around on Facebook Marketplace for cars and bikes, as I frequently do, and I stumbled across a true diamond among all the gravel. I offered full price on it just hours after it was posted. It was accepted, and I got it. What, might you ask, is worthy of all that fuss? It was a 2010 Ducati Hypermotard 1100 Evo SP. It's a bit of a mouthful, but let me explain. Back in the early 2000s, Ducati released the first generation of Hypermotard. Open trellis frame, a big 1100 air-cooled motor good for about 100 horsepower, and most importantly, no rider aids of any kind. The bike was an instant hit, with aggressive styling, a comfortable riding position, and loads of power. It is truly, though, an expert bike because there are no safety nets to protect you from yourself, and being so light and torquey, it is very easy to get in well over your head on it. A few years later, Ducati released an updated version, a mid-cycle refresh, if you will, and they called that version the Evo, meaning it was an evolution of the first bike, but they followed the same overall design. In this case, they fixed a few mechanical gremlins, shed some weight, and added some more power. But that wasn't enough. Ducati is well known for making special versions of many of the bikes that they make. So they released the SP version. SP more or less means Speciale. Traditionally, it means it's a racing version made in low numbers at a higher price with some fancy parts. In this case, they started with a standard Hyper, then they replaced a bunch of parts with carbon fiber, replaced the stock shock with a Trick Öhlins unit. Think of Öhlins kind of like the Brembo for brakes. And special forks with a DLC coating on the tubes, which stands for Diamond Light Coating, and it happens to be jet black. Mix in a few other lightning and performance improvements, and you end up with the fastest, most powerful, and lightest version of the best version of this bike. This is one of those rare bikes that never comes up for sale, and it's a blink and you'll miss it opportunity. Even better, the bike had sat in heated storage under a cover for 11 of the 13 years since it was built, and mine only had 728 miles on it. I knew I needed to have it. So, a drive up to Maine, and it was mine. I'd been looking for another track bike somewhat casually, and that's the goal for this bike. I'm making some minor changes to it, but overall I'm going to keep it as stock as possible. New tires, safety wired oil filter, and some sliders is all that I really have planned. This bike is already perfect from the factory. I'm also refreshing most of my safety gear over the winter, and so the next year I'll be doing frequent track days on the bike. Meanwhile, I've been having a blast bombing around my local back roads and getting used to how it rides. To say it's rowdy is an understatement. It wants to wheelie, slide, and do burnouts at every opportunity. It snarls, growls, and screams as you ride it. It brings smiles with every turn, and every time I stop for gas, people come up and want to know more about it. Sure, it's not as fast as a sport bike, but I can guarantee it's a lot more fun, and much like my choice to keep the C7, I'm all about the most fun and engagement possible, rather than just outright speed. And if my previous hyper was any indication, I can still go pretty fast on it while having fun. So what's next for Fred's Full Throttle? Am I done with investments in new cars? Well, you have to wait months for my next video. No, I'm not done with new cars, and I'm slowly working towards a few things. I'll be making videos occasionally when something comes up that I want to cover. I'm now completely making videos based on my own desires rather than chasing subs or views or money. Ultimately, my hope is that this makes it more fun to me and that slowly I work back to a cadence of some kind. For now, I'm just finding my way and I want to enjoy my life as much as I can, and we'll see what happens. So until the next time, I'll see you when I see ya. Thank you for watching. Fred out!